wonderful correspondents and leaders from the GMU CCMH to walk us through tonight's topic. And just for real quick, my name is Katie Schneider. I am with the Connor Strong Foundation, which is a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit that focuses really on our youth, our kids, our high school students, our elementary school students, even our middle school students. Here in the Northern Virginia and Central Virginia area. So that is what we do. And thank you guys, Sarah and Abby, so much for being here tonight. And I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. We're so excited to be here and really grateful for the partnership with Connor Strong. My name is Abby. Sarah and I are both trainees at the Center for Community Mental Health. I'm a third year PhD student. And just for a quick overview, the Center for Community Mental Health provides evidence-based therapy and assessment in the broader Northern Virginia community. And we serve a wide range of folks. I think we have some information about or links for the CCMH at the end of our presentation as well, but I'll hand it over to Sarah from here.
Thank you, Abby. So my name is Sarah. I'm a current master's student. So working with the center. And thank you guys all for being here today. Katie, thank you for introducing Connor Strong. And so we kind of wanted to start off with a little bit of a group share. And feel free to use the chat or to unmute, but we're curious how, if at all, has AI come up in your household, and also whether you have experience with it or not, where do you think kids are being exposed to AI? So we just kind of wanted to get a kind of a handle on the experience with AI.
And feel free to unmute yourself, pop an answer in the chat if you're more comfortable with that, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Absolutely. I'll pop in. I have a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old, and both of them have both come to me and say, "Hey, look at this funny picture." And I know that this is an AI generated picture. It's very obviously AI generated picture, but you have to tell them this isn't real. This isn't, it's one of those things you have to figure it out. In the chat also, expose seeing AI generated art. Yes, same thing.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for sharing that. And also to the person in the chat, that's definitely seeing a big increase, specifically in AI generated art, whether it's on social media or just posted. See in the chat, I think my kids may be too young to notice, but they are probably most exposed using the filters on video calls. Yeah, that's a great example, especially when they are that age, and that's kind of where the exposure ends. That even it's still kind of coming in at that age. Thank you for sharing.
I wanted to share something. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I actually am a technology coach specialist in Fairfax County. And so I see it more so I'm trying to expose and train more of our staff on using it. And then also we have experience with teenagers in high school using it. It's more noticed because it's used inappropriately. But I think as adults, we're stepping into it personally. I use it like just as kind of what we call a thought partner. But I'm stepping into it slowly. At home, I have a high school student, and he has downloaded some apps and has been playing with it for memes and again, art.
Can you do me a favor? I'm Tom Warrows, and I used to work for IBM for a long time. But can you define some of your terminology when you talk about, because this is all new to me. I mean, I read about it in the Wall Street Journal, but when you talk about filters or some other capabilities of AI, I mean, in my mind, it brings up something that a young teenager is not thinking of, they're using it different ways. So when you talk about it, can you just sort of elaborate a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, so great. Thank you for bringing that up. We are going to go a little bit more in depth into just kind of the overall definition of AI and kind of what we're talking about in a couple slides, but also for filters and things that might be affecting younger kids. That's going to typically be if they're on a video call or on an app that's putting filters over the picture or on their face on the screen. And then I think what the other example is for the AI generated art, that's going to be images or videos or audios that are generated by artificial intelligence. So they are not being created or manufactured by a human being. They're being made by these computer systems. And Abby, I don't know if I missed anything there.
I think Christina has a question too when you get a second.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, the kids are near me, so they might be chatting. But I wanted to also say I've been working on some things related to digital sustainability and AI use, and there's a lot that I've learned recently about just the sheer amount of electricity and water that's used and the strain on that infrastructure. And so I think as I've learned how to as I've learned how to use AI more efficiently and also just with those things in mind of like, when do I need it, when don't I? That's another thing that I've been wanting to pass on to my kids so that as they start using it with schoolwork or things like that, how are we using it efficiently so that we're being mindful of what we're consuming.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the risks and benefits, and I think that's a really important one for us to have in mind is that the sustainability aspect of AI too.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing, and feel free to jump in and with questions or with thoughts. But we're gonna move ahead. There's trying to see the chat. Okay. So just a little bit of an overview. We're going to talk about kind of the basics of AI, the benefits, challenges, the mental health implications specifically, and then some tips for navigating AI with your kids. So that's kind of our plan. So AI is defined as it stands for artificial intelligence, and it acts as technology that enables computers and similar machines to simulate human learning and things like comprehension and problem solving. And so some examples of where this is showing up is chatbots on websites like ChatGPT or Character AI, virtual assistants, AI overview on Google. So when you type something into Google and that little paragraph pops up at the top with some bullet points and not really sources, that is an AI. That's an example of AI. And then also editing sites, which is becoming increasingly more popular for kids in schools and also in colleges. And that can be anything from editing grammar or creating full assignments. So AI is around us all the time and is not really going away or dying down. It's just kind of continually increasing in popularity. And so there are some challenges and there are also some benefits. These are just kind of in general, not really for the mental health implications part, but AI can tailor lessons and learning experiences to the needs of a specific child or a teenager. It can foster creativity through visual creations by, generating some of these images for ideas. It can motivate and help come up with plans to engage children in new ways because of the vast coverage of information that it's taking in. And it's also a free and accessible source for a lot of people who may not have access to tutors or just general information. But with these benefits, each of these kind of has a challenge that correlates with it, which is what I'm going to move into. So AI can reflect biases and stereotypes, or reinforce negative beliefs and actions because of it's getting all of this information from news articles and information that is kind of already out there in human-made sources. So as we all kind of hold biases and stereotypes, AI reflects that. There are some issues with eroding privacy. The information that you give AI, it then in turn uses to kind of learn from that. And so it's possible for especially kids who are new to it to give AI more information than is necessarily safe. AI also, with creating false images, can be used for fraud or bullying purposes. There can be audio creation to mimic voices, and deepfake images of people. So that's definitely something to, yeah, Katie?
Wasn't there just that, and I'm just using this as an example, but wasn't there just that video that just came out last week after the Super Bowl of all those celebrities wearing the shirts, like in response to like the anti-Semitism, and that was completely AI. Did anybody else see that? It was
Yeah,
like Scarlett Johansson and then like Steven Spielberg, all of these Jewish actors. That entire thing was AI, and it looked so real.
yeah, there's a lot, and it's so realistic. And it's becoming increasingly realistic as it gets more refined and sophisticated. And then finally, kind of what we talked about with websites like Grammarly or like with ChatGPT, some of the more educational sites can go from just, editing grammar to fully creating assignments with, typing in a prompt like I need a 500-word essay on this topic, and it just kind of spits it out. So those are just some general challenges to look out for. AI does play a big role in the mental health community. The number one thing that we're going to talk about today is AI chatbot counselors. But for some of the positives, AI has been really great for wearable technology. So technology that tracks sleep and behavioral patterns and can sometimes tag or alert clinicians to certain behavioral patterns that would be missed in other situations, or areas that might not be noticed. And then for mass amounts of data and behavioral patterns in research, these algorithms are also sifting through data and kind of easing that up a little bit for researchers and clinicians. So I wanted to show this example. There is a website called Character AI, and this is an example of one of these chat bots. So when you go to the website, if you type in therapist, this is the first thing that comes up. Is everybody able to see that? I think. Okay.
Yes.
And when you click on it, this prompt pops up that says, "Hello, I'm your therapist. I've been working in therapy since 1999 in a variety of settings, including residential, shelters, and private practice. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I'm a nationally certified counselor and is trained to provide EMDR treatment in addition to cognitive behavioral therapies. So what did you want to discuss?" So at the very top, it says this is not a real person or a licensed professional, but this prompt is if you just saw the prompt, if I had made my screen a little smaller and just that prompt had shown up, for both kids and adults, it can look kind of enticing and kind of, it can bring up some questions about the realism of it. And then down at the bottom in this teeny tiny font, it says, "This is AI and not a real person. Treat everything it says as fiction." So I just wanted to show this example. The description says, I am a licensed CBT therapist, and this was created just by a user on the site. And then I have another example. So this was a ChatGPT chatbot that I typed a prompt into, and I said, I'm feeling stressed and anxious about middle school. I've been getting bullied and I don't want to go back. Can you help? And ChatGPT, this was not a therapist character. This was just when you open ChatGPT and you type this in is what came up. One thing that ChatGPT does suggest is talking to a trusted adult. It does encourage that. And it offers to help figure out what to say to an adult or how to cope with the stress. So for kids who may be in distress or in crisis, these chatbots do present themselves as problem solvers for this, despite the lack of empathy and connection that they're able to offer. So AI counseling, for teens who don't have access to counseling, it can be inaccessible and anonymous and free. Sorry, Katie, I just saw your comment. Do they pick up on keywords in the requester prompt? Yes. So if I had edited it and changed like the type of school or the issue, I said words like anxious, or it will take that and continue learning from it, and it'll kind of log the previous messages and use that to then generate a more updated thing. So that won't just be the prompt that it shoots out for any mental health problem. It'll personalize it to the specific keywords in the prompt. AI can provide kind of the general stress management tips, coping skills, breathing exercises, things that are a little bit more immediate. And then, like I mentioned earlier, AI is being used more commonly in wearables to collect data, to kind of tag some of those symptoms that might pop up here and there. Of course, there is a flip side to this. Turning to AI can definitely restrict a child or a teen's motivation to reach out to a counselor or a person in their life and create some isolation there. The information on AI can very frequently be incorrect and shouldn't be used in place of mental health care. There is just a lack of human connection. There's not, there's not the capability for empathy. It can increase feelings of loneliness or isolation if children are turning towards this for kind of their sole comfort or their sole interaction. Then the increased screen time coupled with kind of the isolation can increase feelings of loneliness. And then again, there is that continued risk of bullying that can contribute to lower self-esteem and impact mental health through those ways.
Thank you, Sarah. Before we go on to the next slide, Sarah, if you don't mind going back one, I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions here, because I know that there's a lot that just came up, and when I first saw that therapist chatbot, it was alarming to me in many ways. I had a lot of feelings about it, and so just wanted to see if anyone had thoughts, feelings, questions that you wanted to share at this point.
Yeah, let me ask you, one of the things, some of this is starting to creep in when you start using your workstation, and it's like something like self-correct. I mean, nothing makes me so mad as I type something in and it changes it, and I send it out and the word is totally changed. And so it looks like some of the tools coming out now, you don't even ask for them. They're just sort of inserted in there. But, is this going to turn into, I'm a little older than the rest of you. I learned my feelings and my emotions and how I judge people and how I deal with people are skill sets that took me decades to develop. Okay. And this appears almost like it's going to make us less sensitive. In other words, we're going to depend on this and we're not going to use this, our head, our mind, to really assess what people are. You know what I mean? I mean, I could see this evolving so that it's almost like a Fitbit or something like that. That's going to generate something like this thing. I mean, is anybody? I mean, from a mental point of view, is it not going to diminish your mental health skills, your ability to make these value judgments?
Yeah, Tom, thank you for sharing that. I hear you. That's absolutely a concern, and I think there's a lot of ways that we don't know what the future of AI is going to hold. And I think it's really important to continue to have some of these critical conversations about what it looks like and, you know, how we can mitigate some of the harms. And I think you bring up a really excellent point as well about the fact that we often don't consent or aren't aware of AI use in many ways, like an example of that Sarah provided earlier on of searching something on Google that just pops up automatically. You're not asking Google to use AI to generate the response. And so there's, yeah, a lot of ways that it's popping up that we may not always be aware of.
Yeah. One good thing, one of my grandchildren has a eye impairment, and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal talking about there are glasses now for the blind that will allow them to take whatever that there's what they would be seeing, but it also is helping individuals in impaired vision with AI helping to I'll say see better or to understand what they're looking at better. So it's got, I mean, definite. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there are absolutely benefits, and thank you for sharing that experience too. Christina, did you have a question or a thought?
Yeah, I mean, and it is starting to creep in more and more in different areas. And yesterday I took my kids to the pediatrician and I had to sign a waiver if I wanted to allow them to use AI to then kind of transcribe our visit. So then the doctor could kind of go back through the transcription and really think about what was said. And working in that space in tech, I also know that a lot of the AI transcripts are not always accurate. They don't capture things. There's a lot of people who are not they're just disappointed in what it generates sometimes, and then also it can be really good and it can be really helpful. So it'll be interesting too to see in that health field how it impacts your interactions with your healthcare providers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Sarah, did you have a comment or a question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions at this point? Okay, before we go on to the next slide, I just want to ask whether anyone has had conversations with their children or families about AI, and if you feel comfortable sharing, how did that go, or any challenges that you've noticed? Space.
I mean, I'll share. It's when you put in the a moment ago the example, you know, yes, it did say this is not a real person, but you really had to look at it, you know, and it sounded like a real person. So we did have to have that conversation of you can't trust, like even real people putting stuff on the internet, you can't trust it. So you can't trust the AI, you can't trust the real people who put stuff on the internet sometimes. So you really have to, you know, verify your resources and really kind of do your due diligence to make sure that what you're reading and what you're working from is accurate information. It's a little scary, really.
Yeah, it is scary, and it can be really confusing. I think a lot of times it's built in a way that can be confusing. Yeah. All right, so for the next part of the conversation, we wanted to talk a little bit about where to go from here. As Sarah mentioned, there's AI isn't going anywhere. And like many emerging technologies that have come up, it's really important to learn how to work with them, because we can't get rid of them, or it's not looking like that's going to happen anytime soon. And there are benefits, just like with everything. Yeah, I'm seeing a comment in the chat: as a math teacher, talk to students that getting the answer does not mean you magically have math knowledge or skills. Give an alternative problem and then have the students tell me how to do it. Yeah. Yeah. So having it come up in schools where kids are relying on that for their homework.
Are the schools teaching this? I live down in Louisa County, and they're putting courses in their middle school and high school now. How is it being introduced or is it being introduced at the elementary? I mean, how's it being introduced in the schools today?
That's a great question. I think it looks really different in different school settings. And folks in the chat, you're welcome to jump in. It sounds like we have somebody who's a teacher in the audience, so maybe you have some insights about that. But I know it can be really variable across settings.
Well, I can, again, I'm a technology specialist in Fairfax County. And so at this time, students are not allowed to use actual generative AI tools themselves. Only staff can use those. However, the focus right now is to try to teach students about using generative AI appropriately, looking at many of the things that the speakers have shared. Fact checking, looking at it. It can help you, but then it's not authentic all the time with voice. So right now it's more so about teaching kids how to use it and how to, integrate it. It's not all bad. But unfortunately, a lot of the stories we have are because of using it to write up full-on paper, etc. So I'm not going to take up all the time, but the speakers also made an excellent point. It's not going anywhere. So we also want students to be innovative and creative, and then their jobs being created with this technology. So also trying to find ways to prepare them. And not just in areas like computer science, across the board.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Leslie. That's a really helpful perspective, and I think you're bringing up really excellent points about the creativity that can come from it too. There's a lot that is possible now with generative AI, and so learning how to use it and how to kind of navigate some of these really important and challenging questions that come up about how to use AI is a really important skill, or can be an important skill for kids to have. So we just wanted to share, with that in mind, a few tips for navigating these conversations about AI, because they can feel really overwhelming and challenging. The first step is just getting ready, knowing the basic info and resources about AI. Coming to this presentation is a great first step there. Or maybe it sounds like for a lot of folks, it's not a first step, but you've already been gathering this information. Starting with curiosity. It's a great opportunity to gauge what your child knows about AI and to gently correct any misunderstandings or fill in any of the gaps for them. You might choose to then explore AI together. This may be using AI for a fun activity. So an example of that might be you name the things that are in your fridge and have AI come up with or ask ChatGPT to come up with a fun recipe for you and your child to try together. Something along those lines. You might listen to a podcast about AI, just have a conversation together. those sorts of things to explore what it is and what it can do. And then practicing fact checking and critical thinking. This is a really important skill for everyone that many people have touched on already. And with some guidance, you might help your child practice fact checking it with AI. So if I look something up and I see the that Google generates that paragraph from AI for me answering my question, how do I check those sources to know if that's accurate and reliable information? Where else do I go? How do I recognize what's a good source? Again, these are all important research skills that have always been necessary. They just look a little bit different now. And then finally, setting boundaries around AI use. There's no right or wrong way to set these boundaries, and this is really based on your family values. It can be similar to social media boundaries or other house rules that you might set. But you might decide to create rules around what sites your child is able to use, during what times, supervised or unsupervised, how often. I know there was a really important point that came up earlier about the sustainability of AI because it does require a lot of resources to use. And so that may be an important consideration and factor into the boundaries that your family sets as well. Right. And then we also wanted to talk about some safety and well-being considerations. These are really similar to other online and social media safety resources. So I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. And some really important things to keep in mind when we're talking about AI use with kids. So like I mentioned earlier, talking about how to find credible sources, things like being able to recognize experts, teaching kids how to spot fake images or misleading content. Like we talked about earlier in this presentation, that can be really hard to do, and not just for kids, for adults too, but there's sometimes those telltale signs, people talk about those AI being really bad at generating hands and feet. So recognizing when there's like 10 fingers on one hand, something like that, those little telltale signs about an image being fake. Discussing privacy and security. So things like not sharing your full name or location if you're typing something into ChatGPT or using AI. Considering setting limits on AI use along with other screen time, maybe something that you decide to do as a parent. Importantly, discussing where your child can go for help if they see uncomfortable or harmful content. What can they do? Who can they talk to? And then just continuing to check in about AI use. A lot of this is changing really rapidly and by the day. And so just continuing to have some of those conversations as the landscape changes and as your kids get older. And then we also wanted to just touch on some signs, some things to look for that can suggest that AI or social media, internet use in general may be causing a problem for your child. Noticeable shifts in mood. So things like worry or sadness, especially shifts in mood after screen time, is an important sign to look out for. Concentration problems, more so than usual. I know that concentration problems can be common, and noticing if there's a shift in those. Problems with sleep, falling asleep, staying asleep, not being able to get off of screens before going to sleep, things like that. Irritability, drops in grades or changes in academic performance, poor school attendance, finding it difficult to go to school, and withdrawal from friends or other activities that they typically find fun. So, where do you go from here? Where do you go to get more help and support? As of now, the answer is not ChatGPT or AI, as we saw earlier. But therapy can be a helpful resource. So, if seeking therapy, it can be helpful, or we recommend looking for cognitive behavioral therapists. That is a skills-based approach that's focused on breaking the cycles of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And there are other types of therapy as well, counseling staff in schools, going to a private therapist. Here's the link for the Center for Community Mental Health that Sarah and I are at, and a few other therapy resources as well. This is by no means an exhaustive list, just some suggestions of where you could start if you're seeking more support for you or for your child.
And thank you, Katie, for your message in the chat. So yes, this the workshop is being recorded and will be posted. So don't feel like if you miss a link, it's gone.
Yeah, and we also just wanted to share a few other resources that, again, this is not an exhaustive list, just some things that we have found helpful, and I think can be helpful in sort of balancing this critical eye to some of the harms and benefits of AI, and also navigating the AI landscape in a solutions focused way. I think that it can be helpful to have some optimism too, about the potential for these tools paired with that critical lens. So for parents, a few books here, also some podcasts that talk about parenting and AI. This Digital Thriving resource there that has a bunch of resources and also research about technology and AI. And then there are a few on here that are targeted for kids and teens. So a book there for a picture book for younger kids, and then some podcasts as well. So with that, we will pause there for any thoughts, questions, experiences that anyone would like to share. Thank you again so much for being here and for sharing everything that you've shared so far. This has been a really wonderful discussion.
When you talk about AI, I mean, it feeds off of data, and you talked about filters. If I'm in it, let's say, can I restrict what data is looked at, the sources of data? So, for instance, if I'm looking if I want to be able to selectively do this, I can skew what you're going to be seeing with the response from AI, right? And that can either be good or bad. But if I'm in a school setting, for instance, let's say in the junior high school, can I let them experiment with AI and restrict it to a small set, let's say the Congressional Library, something like that? Can you do something of that nature, or what control? The question is, what better controls do you have in using AI?
Yeah, I mean, there are some AI bots that, for example, there's one, I'd have to search for the name of it, but that only learns from what you tell it. And so it's almost like building your own AI bot. So for a teacher who might want to make one, putting in just information for a certain subject for their class, and then those who use that the AI bot will then have learned off of what the teacher has put in. But for some of the bigger chatbots like ChatGPT and all of that, there is not a way to kind of narrow down where it's pulling the information And from these bigger ones are, kind of mass used and continue to develop with each user. But there are some that are a little bit smaller and that you can kind of train yourself. Sorry, thank you for bringing that up, though.
What are some of the best ways? I know we talked really quickly about, AI generated images as far as things having extra fingers or extra long appendages, whatever. What are some of the ways we might be able to tell an AI generated image for like a news article that kids might think they're referencing for a research paper of some sort? Is there a good way to do that other than fact checking everything that you might see on that image?
Sarah, do you have thoughts on that, or do you want?
I do, but if you do, you can.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So one of the things that you can do is to reverse image search. To put it into Google image search and see if it's being used. I know that that's still fact checking, but seeing if it's other places. Also, just is it aligning with the news article headline? Is the website the news website outlet credible? Is it something that is yeah, is it a source that you recognize, or a source that you're familiar with, or that other people in your life are familiar with? But yeah, I think it's going to just become a little bit increasingly more difficult to really tell, as we're kind of moving out of the cartoonish AI images and into these more realistic applications.
Is AI also, I would think, on a cell phone? I mean, is it accessible? I guess it would be. I'm sitting at a computer right now, which has got a little more power than a cell phone does, or at least I think it does. And so a cell phone or an iPad or something like that, they're all equal platforms to be able to access AI then. Because the compute power is at the other end. Okay.
Yeah, all of these websites and things are also on phones and tablets, and then also on social media apps like Facebook. Those all have kind of a built-in AI feature that are also on cell phones.
It is, we have you have a lot of different, you got Facebook, you got X, you have all different kinds. You talk about this chat GB, whatever it is. Do you see multiple platforms, AI platforms are already there that are coming out that are going to be competing against each other? Is that already there today? When I hear AI talk about it, it's just a generic term. But are we competing platforms out there that you're going to start paying for or influencing type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are the big sites that kind of have their, like Google has their AI, and Microsoft and those.
They're already built in there. Okay.
Yeah, they have their own. Just like there's Siri for iPhones and Alexa and Echo, like all of the different variations of the same thing. So yeah, I'm not sure what the landscape will look like in terms of competition between those. It seems like ChatGPT is the big one right now, but there are certainly other versions as well.
I just wanted to jump in and say thank you, ladies, both again, very, very much for all the work you put into the presentation tonight and all of the research. if if anybody has any extra follow-up questions, you can always feel free to send them to my email, which is where you got the Zoom link, or I think Sarah and Abby, if you feel, like you would like to, you can share your email addresses as well. But definitely, these wonderful ladies will be back in March for our next workshop, which is called Parenting in the Ever-Changing Landscape. Hey, look, there it is. There's my graphic. So basically a continuation of this conversation, right? How to talk to kids about current events, how to talk to kids about the issues that they might be seeing right now. They're all confusing. I referenced a little bit ago that video that came out about anti-Semitism. How do you talk to your kids about that? That's a really heavy topic. It's a really explosive topic. There are different opinions. There are lots of different things. And this is not, to get into it, but how do you have those conversations when your kids see something online or in the newspaper or in their schools that they just don't understand? So that will be our topic for March. I'm super excited about it.
Katie, I just a little. I live down in Louisa County, and I'm with the Connor Strong Foundation, and I brought the programs down here to four counties down here, and I'm on what is called a Safe School Task Force for Louisa County. And one of the things, by the way, the superintendent of schools there was chosen as the #1 superintendent in the state. That man is just phenomenal leadership. But one of the programs they have down there is educating the parents. I mean, it is a major emphasis about on all fronts. But what is big? I mean, for instance, in Fairfax County, Leslie, or the rest of you there might have children there. How are you educating the parents? Because again, I'm an engineer. I worked for IBM for 30 some odd years. I understand it. This I can see is, man, this is frightening. I mean, I have challenges that parents facing. And is anything being done in the schools for the PTOs or that just, I mean, not to scare them, but just to make sure they understand what's going on?
By no means can I speak for, the whole county or, for everyone or everything. However, I think a lot of schools, they do workshops for parents, not every school, but they have done workshops for parents, especially about digital well-being and navigating this whole digital space. So I think that I would say to you, I would agree that more can be done. I know even with me being in a high school, we haven't done as much with parents, but we also utilize some of the resources I know that the speaker shared. We use another resource called Common Sense, which is really great about digital well-being, navigating the digital space. It has elements about AI, but just sharing a few things that I've observed and participated in.
Christina, what's your feedback too?
Yeah, and I think that I mean, AI in general, I know has been around for a very long time, but ChatGPT being fairly new and just the explosion of everything, I think a lot of people are playing catch up as far as learning what it is and how to use it and what we need to be concerned about. But I've seen, especially at Mason, there's been a lot of work being put together toward courses and certificate programs on ethical AI use. So educating the students now so that they can go out into the workforce, whatever their field may be able to promote ethical AI use. And then there's also a big research project at Mason as well that I recently learned about. And that project is the teams created educational resources to help students and instructors navigate ethical use of AI in post-secondary education. So there's a lot of initiatives, I think, that are coming up now. So I don't know how much is being done, especially in the K through 12 schools now, but I think people are learning it now in higher ed to then hopefully carry over into the schools.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Christina. And thank you also for the link that you added in the chat. That looks like a really great resource. And I like how it provides some guidance on things that you can use the Copilot or ChatGPT for, and how to craft your response. That's to be more efficient and get the information that you need. That's a great resource. So thank you.
Awesome, guys. Well, we will, if nobody has any other further questions, we will go ahead and call it a night. Again, we will have this recording up on both the Connor Strong Foundation website, and the GMU CCMH does have their own YouTube channel where it lives. So once I get that link, I can fire it back out to everybody's email. So in case you missed any of the links or any of the anything that you wanted to double check out, we will have that for you. And again, thank you everybody for being here tonight. It was a great discussion. I'm so glad that you guys came, and I hopefully you got something out of it, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.